You're thinking, wait a second, Matt, I'm never ever going to buy Azure. It's already been bought and they already bought a support agreement. Why do I have to have this? Folks, I will be honest with you that a lot of things in this module you may not have to use, but I am going to show you some resources, the calculator, the free services, things that you might use in your day-to-day job, especially if you build projects in Azure, you're going to have to know how to estimate it. So inside this section, we're going to talk about all those key things that govern cost, our subscriptions. We'll talk about service level agreements, especially when you use more than one Azure service. You have to understand how to combine create what is called a composite SLA, so you know what the support is that Microsoft's going to give you for that solution that uses multiple services. So let's take a look and hop right in and start with the first one, subscriptions. That's where you get your stuff done. It's how we provide billing and access boundaries for our customers, and for folks like yourselves, we have an account can have multiple subscriptions. So generally what we see is most customers have one Azure Active Directory tenant and they have all the subscriptions for Azure underneath it. Now, one just special note about that, Azure subscriptions is one type of subscription we have. We have Office 365, we have Dynamics 365, they're all different subscriptions that can be tied to that one tenant. Oftentimes with most customers, we have one user ID tied to multiple subscriptions. We organize those subscriptions with a concept called management groups, and you go up to 6 levels of depth in management groups, but they allow us to control the flow of our policies and some of our security. So when we looked at Azure Policy in Module 3, we got to see how we can work with those different things, and we can inherit conditions. It's how we organize when we have multiple subscriptions, because most customers that we work with have lots of subscriptions. A lot of our enterprise customers have hundreds of subscriptions. Well, how do we manage it from a cost perspective, a policy perspective? We use management groups because it's one of the scopes that we can apply those policies at. When we look at our subscription offers, what types of things do we have? Well, we have a free subscription, believe it or not, and I'll show you how to access that in just a moment. But we have pay-as-you-go. I like to call this the full retail price. In other words, you got really bored one day. It was 2 a.m. in the morning. You pulled out your credit card and said, I want some Azure. It's full retail pricing. It's pay-as-you-go, and that's full price. But we also have an enterprise agreement. Some of my enterprise customers that may be listening right now, you probably have an EA for your organization. And what that is, you've signed up to commit to spend so much in Azure over a 3-year period of time. And based on that commitment level, you get a discount. So your prices are less inside of it. We have a student subscription. When you think about these different types of subscription offerings, they dictate price, but inside of an organization, you can have multiple ways that you acquire Azure for your organization. Now, most businesses will be in an enterprise agreement. Why? It's a great way that we can catalog, get a discount, and work with the environment. But we do have free services. You have the ability to test Azure for 12 months or a $200 credit that allows you to explore Azure. You can also look at these things for 12 months for popular service, 30 days for other services, and there's a bunch of other stuff that's free. Now, at the end of the trial, you will have the choice to upgrade as pay-as-you-go. Now, folks, when you look at Azure free accounts, when you sign up for the first time, it's going to ask you for a credit card information, and really that's to prove that you're a human, that you belong. It's not going to charge your card unless you explicitly say, I want to move from a trial to pay-as-you-go pricing, and then that's when your card will start being billed. Now, also a special note, the subscription that I use for a lot of the demonstrations and as I teach and learn is I use my Visual Studio subscription. So if you are a developer and you have a former MSDN and Visual Studio subscription, you actually have monthly benefits. So I have a Visual Studio Ultimate subscription. I get $150 every month to work inside of Azure. So there's lots of ways to get and use in Azure, but understand my subscription is all by itself. It cannot be combined with other subscriptions designed specifically for dev and test purposes. In my case, I happen to use it to teach. So what I want to do is I want to hop in the portal and show you where the free services are. So let me go ahead and switch into the portal. And in my portal, I'm just going to do a quick search for free services. And I type in free and just go ahead and open it up. And it tells me how to get the 12-month with free Azure account. It tells me what I get for 12 months for free. But as I scroll down, I want to point out something here that's really nice. Always free services. Folks, now I tell you that most of your businesses, you're not going to run in the always free services category, but I like to show this because you might work for nonprofits or small community environments where they need just a little bit of computing power or a little bit of horsepower. You might be able to do that for free inside of Azure. So research these, especially if you're involved in some of those committees outside of work. I'm telling you what, folks, it's a really good way to work in Azure. And if you don't, guess what? this is a good way to kind of kick the tires. See what's there. You have all kinds of technologies you can kind of explore and research and leverage inside of Azure. So you definitely want to take a look at those free services. Not a lot of folks know that they're there, but they've always been there. They've always been there for us to use and leverage. We have our free services. So let's go ahead and switch back. Just wanted to show that to you real quick. And inside of Azure, we took a look at our free services, but now let's talk about how to plan and manage costs. And I know I hear the yawns, but folks, you have to understand how you're billed. And first off, how is pricing and purchasing determined? Well, under the covers, we have this little concept called a usage meter. Now, if you're thinking like, hey, is that like my meter, my electric meter, or my water meter? Yeah, exactly it is. Whenever you start to work with Azure resources, the meter starts to spin. Well, how fast does it spin? What's my price? Well, it depends. It depends on what type of customer are you. Are you an enterprise customer and have an EA with the discounted rate, which means it changed how that usage meter spins? Or are you a cloud solution provider, a CSP? This is generally for our mid-sized to smaller organizations where they hire a partner come in to build those solutions in Azure on their behalf, and sometimes those partners will have discounts, so that can control the price. Then we also have the web direct or the pay-as-you-go. That's basically the full retail price of Azure. So it depends on how you acquire your subscription is going to control your price. But we also have other factors that come into play. What type of resource? Every resource inside of Azure has different price points. And also we have different types of services that are basic services, that are premium services, that are standard service. Those all dictate that. And then we also have the ever popular location, location, location. What region you put that stuff in matters as well. There's lots of factors that come into that pricing and purchasing. And when we look at Azure, you have to understand this. When you start standing resources up, how do we calculate that? So knowing where your stuff is, knowing how you acquired that is going to determine what your bill is going to be. Now we also have charges for zones, and we have different billing zones. Now really, the main reason we have these zones are for bandwidth purposes. We've talked about in some of the modules, modules 2 specifically, we talked about egress traffic charges. When we have charges that go outside, when we have outbound data transfer, it's all dictated by the different zones that we have, and these billing zones control that environment based on that pricing for outbound data transfers. And really, you'll see this in the calculator when you're working with these. And generally speaking, the zones are kind of a higher level abstract for billing, higher than the geographies that we have inside of Azure. How do you estimate costs? Remember, we talked one of the benefits of cloud, and one of the terms we did in Module 1, predictive cost. Well, how do I predict my cost? We actually have a pricing calculator that will allow you to come in and see what those price resources. I'm going to show this to you in just a moment so I can show you how it works and how the different pivots and switches and how we can control costs and see what's there. And I'm going to show you how to save a lot of money on a virtual machine without having to change what you actually get. So let's take a look at that calculator right now. So let me switch into the calculator. And in my pricing calculator, and let me clear out my calculator because I've done this a few times. We have the ability to come in here and do any of the services that we want. We have compute, we can look at networking, we can look at storage. Pretty much every service inside of Azure has the ability to have a calculator for it. So I'm just going to go up to the feature because I want to use virtual machines because they do such a good example what's here. Now folks, if you're going to build something in Azure, I'm willing to bet somebody's going to ask you, how much is this going to cost me? Well, you're going to have to know how to use the calculator. So here I am in the calculator. I'm just going to go into virtual machines, and it's going to add it to my calculator here. And notice that, and I'm going to kind of keep this, pay attention to this little number. Right now we're at $150.62 a month for this virtual machine, which is a D2 V3 virtual machine. It's currently running Windows. Now bear in mind, the cost of this virtual machine has not only what operating system you have, but also what type of virtual machine we have. So this is Windows. What if I want to run Linux, which doesn't have a licensing cost? Notice what happens to the price. Now it's down to $85. Same virtual machine, but now we don't have to pay that licensing. So when you work with these environments, when you have this, you're buying the license for that. Linux and Ubuntu and CentOS, they don't have licenses, but we have the ability to work with that. But also location matters. Notice I'm in West US. Well, let's go to the newer version of West. Let's go to West 2. And notice what happens. That price goes down to $137. Why? West 2 is a newer data center. It's more efficient. Remember, economies of scale, we pass those savings on to you as our customers, so even in the US. I don't know, Garrett, pick a region for me.
Let's go East US.
East US. East US is 137. East 2, also 137. Let's go Japanese. Let's go to the Far East. 161 for that same VM. Let's go to India. 173. So different locations in different regions. So folks, as you're moving this environment around, understand that the location matters, the location of where we put the resources. And why might you choose one region or another? Well, global reach and latency are going to factor in. Put your regions close to the resources you're going to consume. But if you really don't care, pick the one that's going to save you some money inside of it. So I'll go back to West. So we're back to our 152. Now, remember, this is for the Windows system. What if I want to have some SQL with it? Now, understand what I'm getting ready to do, because you're going to see the number jump quite significantly, because we think you want to buy SQL Enterprise. When I choose SQL here, it's not that I'm going to run SQL on top of this. This means I'm buying a Windows server with a brand new Windows license and a brand new SQL license that I have. And this means I'm going to pay for not only the virtual machine, but also the SQL license. And in this case, it defaults to Enterprise. So I went from 152 to 1,200, a little over $1,200.
That's a pretty significant jump.
Well, I don't want to use Enterprise. Maybe I go down to Web, and that price goes into it. What are you buying a brand new license? Now, folks, a lot of your organizations have bought SQL under what is called software assurance, or SA. If you've bought SQL for your organization with SA, you have what is called license mobility. What does that mean? You can bring that license with you inside of Azure. Now, you can't build it by adding in SQL, putting SQL in the image that you pull from the marketplace. You'll build a Windows server, install SQL separately, and apply your license to that. And you won't have to pay that cost inside of here. So I'm going to turn off SQL here. We have the different type of tier. I have standard, and I have one called low priority. And low priority machines are basically our way of saying, okay, you know what, I'd like to have 5 servers always, but I'd like to have 10 just to have. Well, you can buy 5 additional low priority servers, but if Azure needs that capacity for whatever reason, we're going to take those servers away from you. But to do that, we give you a price discount on those machines. So normally what we'll see is we'll see 5 folks, hey, I have 5 servers running the full price, don't ever touch them, and then I have 5 running low priority, which are called spot instances that Azure can take back if it needs capacity. And because you do that, you get a discounted rate. And choose standard. By the way, basic here are the real minimal servers. There are A-level servers, and we're talking like, a quarter of a gig of RAM, real small single-purpose machines. I'm just going to leave it on standard. Now, the type of machine matters here. So I'm West US, Windows, still 152. I'm a D2 V3, and let me just hop down to a D4, which is the one right below it. That's $300 a month. Let's hop down to D16 or D32 here. $2,000. What are you difference here? How many CPUs? How much gig of RAM? What type of hardware are you looking at? Now, folks, you're looking at that number. I know what you're thinking. Wait a second. $2,000 a month? Are you nuts, Matt? Remember, total cost matters here. This is just for the hardware. And if you're just thinking that, then yeah, Azure may be more expensive than what you're used to seeing. But bear in mind, you have to look at the total cost. How much would it look and create if you were to have the total power, heating, cooling, the IT management for that system on-prem? You have to look at the total cost of ownership, and I'll show you, we have a calculator to help you figure that out as well. So let me go back to my D2 V3, $150 a month. Okay, seems reasonable. But now we have to get a little specialized in licensing. Now, folks, I had a choice when I joined Microsoft 19 years ago. I could go down the technical path, or I could go down some of the licensing paths. Our licensings can be complex. And I'm not asking anybody on this, listening to this, to be a licensing expert, but you want to be smart of how you purchase Azure and what you can do to leverage licenses you may already have, but also how you can prepay some of this. So one of the concepts we have inside of Azure is called a reservation. And what this allows us to do is simply say, you know what, I'm going to prepay for this machine, and I'm going to pay for so many instances of this. So after you've done your proof of concept and say, you know what, the D2 V3 machine that I have can solve my problem, and I need 10 of them. Well, in Azure, you can say, you know what, I'm going to buy 10 of them as a reserve instance, and I'm going to prepay for them for 3 years. And if you choose a prepay for that VM, we'll charge you. By the way, this can be in installments, so you don't have to pay it in one big lump sum, and that's actually relatively new. But we have the ability to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to use these 10 VMs at a D2 V3. Now, the reservation is a subscription property, so we apply this to our subscription, and whenever we spin up a D2 V3 machine, Azure automatically applies the discount. In other words, your folks don't have, oh, okay, I got to make a reserve instance. No, you apply it to the subscription level, then that reservation property seeps through the entire subscription for you automatically. And since you've only prepaid for 10, well, what happens when I get to the 11th virtual machine? It'll go back to that $150 a month. Now, bear in mind, same VM, I'm just prepaying because I know I'm going to use it. Now I'm down to $104 a month for that same VM.
Hey, Matt, I've got a question for you. So we talk about reservations, and they sound like they're a great way for us to potentially be saving money. Now, let's say I prepay for a 3-year reservation. That's what you've got selected there.
Yep.
And I decide I've got this 3 years and I want to prepay for this. But then a year and a half in, I realize that I need to upgrade because I need more powerful virtual machines. Am I locked in for the full 3 years, or is there something I can do there?
You absolutely aren't locked into the full 3 years. When you want to upgrade, you can take what you've purchased and apply it to that upgraded price. So we'll give you the new price. It's going to allow you to move that forward. Now, likewise, let's say, hey, you know what? I don't want to prepay and I want to get out of it. There is a bit of a fee to get out of the agreement, but it's not as bad as you have. And there's a really good document, matter of fact, on the calculator that talks about the penalties if you have to move out. But I'll tell you what, when folks have had to do this, it's a very minimal charge. But we do charge you a little bit. But it's not like, okay, it's a $10 million penalty because no, it's not how it works. And especially when you want to upgrade those machines, you can do so as well. And you basically take what you've purchased and apply that as a credit essentially inside the environment. But reserve instances, really great way to save money. And folks, you're thinking, oh, Matt is droning on about reserve instances. My personal experience, I saw questions on AZ 900, AZ 103, AZ 300, and AZ 301. Folks, you will be tested on this because sometimes our exam questions will always have a qualifier at the end of the questions. And you're going to see 2 qualifiers. Just exam tip for a moment here. Indulge me, folks. I hope you don't mind. Take a break from pricing for a moment. When you have exam questions, we're going to give you some kind of qualifier at the end of a question that's going to help you distinguish the right and wrong answers. And 2 of the most common qualifiers you'll most likely see on your exams, at least what I've seen on mine, you're going to give you a scenario, it's going to give you a solution, and it's going to say, choose the option that is the least administrative effort. In other words, which one is the easiest to do? And it's going to give you 4 different options, and one might be 5 steps, one might be 20 steps. Well, what's easier to do? The 5 steps, all right? Then you're going to have another option that says, of all these solutions, which one is the most cost effective? And you might see reservations in there. You might see hybrid benefit, which I'm getting ready to show you. Understand how you can save money. But more importantly, folks, real life, folks are going to ask you, wait a second, man, you're running this, Garrett. It's 150. Can you save money? Is there any way you can lower the cost? Well, yes, I can. And these are how we can do things. So be smart enough about your licensing. Know how to talk to your purchasing department to understand what your company's always purchased. Now I'm getting ready to show you something that might flip your brain. Remember, $150 a month is what we started at. We're down to 100 by just prepaying, 104. But what if you already had a Windows Server license? What if you already had a license that you bought for on-prem and you covered it with software assurance? You can leverage what is called the hybrid benefit. And really what that means, you take that license that you purchased on-prem and you bring it to bear inside of your Azure environment. That's called the hybrid benefit. I'm just going to make one little switch here. Watch what happens to that price. Same VM, haven't changed region, nothing else, nothing up my sleeve. It's like a magic trick. I click on it, now I'm down to $37 for the same exact virtual machine because I'm smart about my licensing. Folks, I'm not a licensing expert. I didn't want to be a licensing expert at Microsoft, not to knock those folks because they're brilliant. I want to be a technologist. But you have to understand how to price things and how you can save money because I guarantee you as you move on your cloud journey, especially when you start talking about virtual machines, 2 things are going to happen. One, how can I save costs in the virtual machine? And eventually they might say, you know what? I want to go into a PaaS service. Most of our PaaS services are going to be less expensive than virtual machines. So there's lots of ways to save money. You got to be smart about licensing as well as what service you use to leverage it. So same system that we're here. Now I want to show you a trick. And I'm going to show you a trick here for real life inside of it. Now, when I scroll all the way down to my calculator here, we have this option that says licensing program. It says Microsoft Online Services Agreement. That's pretty much the pay-as-you-go full retail pricing that we have for this. But if you have an enterprise agreement or another agreement with us as a company, how do you get what that pricing is? One little quick trick. So all I'm going to do is up here in the right-hand corner, just sign in. And I'm going to go ahead and sign in with my Microsoft credentials, and it actually auto signs in for me. And I'm going to scroll all the way back down to my calculator. And now notice at the bottom of this list, it says Microsoft Online Services Agreement. Now it says EA Agreement. So I can actually say EA, and I won't be able to fully show this, but it's there, and select my EA agreement for my customer or whatever I have. And what will happen to this calculator, some kind of magical, it'll put your EA pricing inside of it. And then, because we're Microsoft, we don't have EA agreements, obviously reasons, but where you can get your real pricing. Now, when you're in your portal inside your subscriptions for your company, any price you see inside the portal will be reflective of your enterprise agreement. But you can use the calculator to get that real pricing as well, which is a little trick by simply signing into that calculator to work with it. So let me switch back. Oh, actually, you know why I'm here? We're not going to switch back. I just want to cover the total cost of ownership calculator real quick. Now, the calculator just showed you a pretty easy exercise. Put some stuff in, tell you how much you want, gives you a price. This is not one of those tools. The TCO calculator is basically our pizza as a service. How much does it really cost to make pizza at home? How much does it cost? How much does my oven cost? How much does it cost for my time and labor? How much does it cost for cleanup? All that stuff. We have that ability to do that from an Azure perspective. And we can look at what servers we want to move, what databases we want to move, what storage we want to move, what our networking consumption is. We can put this all into the calculator to help us get a total cost of ownership. And the other thing that we can do, if I go to the next step in the calculator, we can also factor in our different costs. Do we have software assurance? Do we have geo-redundant storage? Do we have virtual machines? What's our electricity cost? What's our storage cost? What's our IT labor cost? We have all these assumptions built into the tool. Now, folks, the only thing I'll ask, if you use the TCO tool, one, be patient. It's going to take some time to build everything in here, but also be open and honest with this tool. The data you put in here, now you're seeing all those other costs associated with running a data center. And at the very end of this tool, when it's done, it's going to spit out a report that's going to show you this is how much it costs to run on-prem those solutions, and this is how much it's going to cost and how much you can save by running them inside of Azure. And so we have that total cost of ownership. And whenever I see this, I'm thinking of pizza and how much it costs to clean the dishes and do everything we eat home. As Garrett says, if you cook, you don't have to clean. How do we factor those costs in when we start talking about data? Because when you look at that big machine where it was, what, $2,000 a month, understand that even on-prem, there's a lot of additional costs, and this tool is designed to help calculate that for you. So let me go ahead and switch back into our slides and finish off with some of the other things we have in the calculator. I talked about the total cost of ownership. What you're seeing here is an example of what the reports would look like that are there, and there's some sample reports you can use. So how do you minimize costs? What are some best practices? Use the calculators, use the pricing tools, monitor your usage, Azure Monitor, use Advisor. Advisor might come up with cost-saving tips. You can set spending limits inside of Azure. Now, the spending limits you set here are soft limits. In other words, when somebody goes over their spend limit, it's going to give them warnings. It doesn't turn them off. Now, with mine, with my Visual Studio, it's a $150 limit, which means when I hit $150 spend in the month, it does deallocate everything until the next month, until my credit. But that's unique to that subscription. Use reservations and hybrid benefit. Choose low-cost regions. Keep everything up to date with your latest offerings. As we change Azure and we add features and functions, sometimes they will be cheaper than what you're currently doing. Use cost owners. Use tags to help apply those things. There's lots of ways we can help minimize costs inside the Azure environment. We also have an Azure cost management utility where we can come in and get patterns and seasonality. We can see how much virtual machines are costing us versus Azure functions versus storage. We have all that ability inside of cost management. We can even get recommendations from that. We have the ability to take Azure to the next level. So pricing, very important. What about support?